Caitlin Clark is a liability on defense, and Indiana just had one of their best defensive performances. Do we think winning this game, and I think they've won their last 2 games without Caitlin Clark, is this a good thing or bad thing for the Indiana Fever to be beating the best team in the league without their best player and, kind of the center of their universe?
It seems like it's mostly a bad thing for you and your love of Caitlin Clark. How does it make you feel?
It concerns me, and because I reached some uncomfortable conclusions like, hey, they play better defense, a lot better, and I've seen Caitlin Clark's bad defensively. They play a lot better defensively without Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark's turnovers are a problem, and so, but let's evaluate Caitlin Clark. No one cares what I think.
We do. That's why we're here.
Yeah. How does Caitlin Clark feel?
Oh, she probably doesn't feel great, especially after the launch of the shoe, right? Because this was all the same week, was it?
Yeah.
The Kobe Bryant shoe that we talked about this week.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I have to mention today's my last day here, at least for a while. And yesterday I pulled off the triumvirate where I got called the C word, the F word, and the R word all on Twitter, thanks to the last couple of days here.
Oh, wow.
Which is that's a pretty
with you.
triple crown of insult.
What's the C word?
Rhymes with runt.
Oh, wow.
And
It
bunch.
went hardcore.
And
I thought it was maybe coon. They called it, but that was probably
wrong
me.
They were not
Wrong
British.
color for
They
that.
weren't saying it in a friendly way. Yeah. I would imagine, yes, Caitlin Clark probably a bit of a whirlwind week. Wasn't there something also about the amount of money that they won because of?
Yeah, they won a big pot of money. I think $500,000. That's like $50,000 a player. It was a big payday for them in winning that. And I think they get more money for winning that than winning the WNBA championship.
I think that's what she said. And I wonder, and I'm not being snide, does the WNBA turn a profit yet?
No.
So shouldn't
Hell
it be
no.
thrilled? Like, I've run businesses that do not turn a profit, and when you finally do, you're like, oh wow, now people can get paid. It seems interesting that they're complaining about the amount of money for one championship not being enough when the whole thing doesn't make money. Doesn't that, it's kind of like this war on noticing.
They're entitled. Trust, they're women, they're entitled. And I say that with a little bit of love and affection, but it's also just reality. And so you don't think Caitlin Clark feels good. Steve, do you think Caitlin Clark feels good about them beating the Minnesota Lynx?
Well, first of all, before I answer that, I want to apologize to Paul for having drug you into this segment, not my call. But anyway, yeah, look, if you're Caitlin Clark, there has to be some self-reflection. And I think there has to be some evolving in her game. Like, do I have to do less offensively and more defensively and just go with the flow of the game? And when my long-distance shot is not falling, adjust my game. But guys, before you gave me that bit of information, I was about to ask or say, the only thing more worthless and less important than a in-season NBA tournament is a WNBA in-season tournament, but obviously that's not true. You set me straight on that. I don't get these in-season tournaments. Are the regular seasons that unimportant that you have to do this? I said this.
It's global outreach.
Local outreach.
It's global outreach. This is what's commonplace in Europe and some of these other countries, these in-season tournaments. And so they're Europeanizing our basketball.
Another reason they hate globalization.
Having played in Europe, I will say that some of those mid-season tournaments take teams from different tiers and pit them against each other. So it could be interesting if someday the NBA got creative. They took maybe the returning champion from the year before in the NBA versus the college champion versus a Division II champion versus a European champion.
Oh.
That probably would be kind of interesting because it is true that there are mid-season tournaments in Europe, but a lot of them are mixing things up so that the Hoosier story can be played out in real time because a team from a second or third division could jump up.
Are you talking about the WNBA mix? Because NBA versus a college team, that would be a total mismatch.
Well, but it would be interesting for fans, would it not? To see what that looks like.
See someone get blown out by 70 points?
And that's what they think will always happen in Europe. But first tier to second tier in Europe is a big jump. But sometimes that second tier team may have some magic. I would just say that, yes, you're right that it is very Europeanized, but there's a bit of a detail there where you're talking about some mixture of tiers.
You like this idea, Steve?
I love this idea. Oh, I like it more than the in-season tournament. If it was one or the other, I would take Paul's recommendation because if you look at Major League Baseball, I was actually a very big baseball fan. That's what I played growing up. There was a magic to the World Series and the All-Star game because there was no interleague play to the late 90s. So there were certain matchups where you'd say, wow, we don't get to see this unless it's spring training, which doesn't count. And it was so rare to see the Dodgers and Yankees on the same field. I'm not saying it hasn't been great for Major League Baseball, but it has watered down the impact. Now, to Paul's idea, if you see an intermingling of teams that otherwise would never be on the same court at the same time, that is a novelty that I could kind of accept and maybe enjoy. The problem with the in-season tournament, it just feels like a regular season game on a funny-looking court where you get a trophy at the end. There's nothing unique about two teams that'll always play each other playing again in the middle of the season.
What about this? And I don't know if they would ever do it because it would be too high risk. But you could move every year. You could move it from WNBA city to WNBA city. And so let's say this year was held in Indiana, and you'd have the Commissioner's Cup game, and it's the WNBA champion versus the high school state champion, male high school state champion in Indiana.
Yes.
Men's high school. And then, if it's in Detroit, you play the Michigan high school state champion.
It sounds like the gauntlet has been thrown down. This is Bobby Riggs, right? Like, I think you're throwing that out there. Are they up for it?
I don't know. It would be high risk because if they got embarrassed, if they got blown out, would that be bad for the league, or would the ratings be so phenomenal that even if they got blown out, it would be interesting?
Well, the ratings would be great for the first half. Until the game's about a 40-point blowout. And Jason, I like what you're thinking. Have that first one in Detroit. Oh, Sophie Cunningham's going to love that. She loves that idea. In Detroit.
How do we get relegation to America? Because relegation in Europe is fascinating. It
would help the NBA.
It would help every major sport, I think, to have
certainly the NBA.
Certainly the NBA, but I also think Major League Baseball would do well with something like that because the season gets so long and there's just no reason to keep playing if you're the Colorado Rockies. If you were threatened with, we're going to be sent down, I think there would be some interest there.
That would be awesome. Paul, you got a flight to catch. And I got some more work to do. Steve's got to move on with life in LA, where I'm sure it's sunny and 80 degrees. It's raining here, or it seems like it rains every day. Steve, thank you so much. Great job. Paul, I'm going to let you get in your Uber and get out of here.